How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm grand. Yeah, I don't know. It hasn't been too bad, really, in lots of ways. So,
well, for our adoring public, I'm Grainne O'Brien, the children's buyer of O'Mahony's bookshop. I'm talking to children's writers and finding out how they're dealing with lockdown. This is Shane Hegarty, lovely Shane Hegarty.
hello.
One of my favorites. So tell me about your lockdown life.
Well,
So you have kids.
I have 4 kids. And this morning, when the How to Draw comic books arrived from O'Mahony's, after I only bought it a couple of days ago.
Listen, it's a good service.
Honestly, it has been fantastic. So I added that to the How to Draw or How to Write Your Own Story and How to Write an Adventure Story. So those Usborne books are brilliant. Yeah. And 3 of the 3 youngest, so I have a teenager, 15-year-old, but the 3 girls who are 7-year-old twins and a 9-year-old, they just sat there this morning and I kind of bought a book for one of those each, kind of knowing what they wanted. And the 3 of them, they've had it. It's been strange, you know. It's in a lot of ways, you know, it's very difficult, obviously, you know, because there's no school, there's no sense of sort of any life outside the town of Skerries where we live. And everything is enclosed, and yet on the other hand, it's been brilliant to see them sort of as a little unit, and to see your kids together playing really well and kind of creating. And we spent loads of time together, and we've got into baking like everybody else.
Yes. And
they've got into you know, they love their books and they love their Lego and they love their TV and they love their different programs, and they've just I don't know. You know, well, there are days when I find it very difficult, and then there are days when I can appreciate the sort of the nice aspects of everything just suddenly slowing down.
Yeah, I was on a Zoom call with our writing group the other day actually, and we were just kind of, it was like a real hushed confession. We were saying like, there's no denying there are aspects of this that have been really nice.
Yeah.
That being said, when I got the call 2 weeks ago to go back to work, I was delighted.
Oh.
You know, and actually that you mentioned Lego. See, I got the Lego bookshop. You see it
very good.
On the shelf? Yeah, bought that for myself at the start of lockdown because I was missing my bookshop so much.
That's what I'm missing most. Because as a writer, I love the 2 aspects of the job that I absolutely love. One is a blank page, and I can do that. I can kind of write, and obviously at the moment there's kind of lots more time to write than there had been for quite a while. But the other thing I really love, and it feels like a lifetime ago that I was in the shop with you in Limerick, and yet it's was it February? Was it maybe the start of March? It was certainly
it was the start of March. It was World Book Week, so it was
March. Right.
And it was the start of March, and I will never forget it because we went for lunch, and Colette and I were talking about how we might have to close the shop for a week.
Oh yeah.
That was only March because you guys were planning. You were both supposed to go to the match.
And that's right. I was on my way off to I did a tour in the UK just after that, and we finished the day the schools closed here in Ireland. I flew back to a very empty Dublin airport, and it began to feel very, very real. But that's what I miss. I mean, I miss as a children's writer, the greatest thing of being a children's writer is you have the greatest audience and greatest readership in the world, and that's not me saying that just purely to, you know, hello Cleveland, you know, you're the greatest. They genuinely are. They're incredible. They're an incredibly responsive readership. They tell you exactly what they feel. If they love something, they will read it 100 times, and they will tell you why they love it. They know it inside out, and even if they don't read it or they haven't read a book, when you're talking to a class or a group, you're still just getting so much from them in terms of questions and ideas, and they're just the laughs that you have. And that's the one thing that I've missed hugely, because there's been festivals like Towers and Tales which haven't happened because of this, because, you know, Mountains to Sea, lots of stuff I had lined up, and so many other festivals that other people have been doing, and you know, that is the thing that I really, really miss, just that opportunity to meet your readership or potential readership, to go to bookshops, to go to libraries. I was lucky enough that Boot the books that I've been reading, which are very cleverly, you mightn't have noticed it, just happened to have a little mention of it here in the background. It was the Dublin Libraries, you know, City of Literature citywide read, and you know, that was the best part of it. You get out, you meet all these brilliant readers, and that is the one thing that I miss. And I also grieve for what, you know, the potential that might be quite a while coming back.
I mean, we're not going to have a book launch in 2020. You know, my events are over, my costume parties and my face painting and all of those things. I really, really love that side of my job, which is part of one of the reasons why I love running the kids department so much. It's because I get to do those events as hard as they are to organize on the day, you know. So I am throwing around the idea of doing a Zoom Teddy Bears picnic, but we'll see. But that's been the hardest part for me. I think the hardest part about it for me has been I can't concentrate on books. I can't read.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
Like I was just saying to, like, I keep repeating myself on every Zoom that we're doing for the shop, but like I've been reading Agatha Christie's, and I've just finished Suzanne Collins' new book, the new Hunger Games book, which was stunning. But in general, I can't read, and that I found very stressful because I'm a reader, you know, but I just can't focus on anything.
But I think this is where the privilege in a way of my situation is that not a huge amount has changed for me, because I was lucky enough in that I had a book out and I had most of my festivals done. I did have some coming up, but I had a lot of the promotional stuff, and then my next book is September, so I could kind of hunker down and do a bit of work and whatever. But I'm aware of all the people who work in bookshops all around the country who suddenly found themselves in this whole new reality and this whole new challenge, and lots of people who weren't working at all, and other people who weren't working the same hours, and other people whose kind of working life has been turned upside down. And I've been in awe of how much the likes of yourselves and other bookshops have been able to turn their model around to an extent for as long as they need to do it, and have been just putting savage hours in to keep things moving. And so I can imagine it's much more difficult to concentrate on the things that where previously you went to work, you had your hours, you did that, and then you had your reading time. You're faced with this whole other question of all these other things that you have to worry about. And so I can understand why it's very hard to read during a time like that.
And I mean, I suppose for us as well, like our working week doesn't exist anymore. Like 9 to 5, 9 to 6, that's not a thing. Like it's 2:00 on a Sunday. I'm gonna go into work at some point today. It doesn't matter what time. I'm going to go in, I'm going to pick the web orders, like the orders that people have been doing for the web. I'll be in the shop on my own, all the lights will be off, and it'll be just me in the shop. And that's been our reality for the last couple of weeks. You know, there's never been more than a certain number of people in the building at any one time. You're on your own, you're in jeans, you've got your headphones, it's just you and the books. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You're just picking web orders. And in some ways it's been lovely. And in others it's been really, like, there's something so soulless about O'Mahony's without customers.
Yeah. But I will say, I think it's taught as somebody who buys books, it's taught me, and I think it's probably taught a lot of other people, that if you want to buy a book online, there are other ways to do it than to go to the place everybody always presumed you had to go to buy a book online. They shall not be named. And I've had, so I've bought from different Irish booksellers during this time, and every single one of those experiences has been brilliant. Yeah. It has been brilliant. And there's not just been the fact that the books arrive as quickly as they would arrive if you bought them from Amazon, but it's also that there's that extra touch involved in them. You often get a little note, you might get a little note, or it might be you're in contact with the person who will put the book together for you. You can ask for stuff in the same way. And I think it certainly taught me that that it's possible to do all of that, and it's better to do all of that. And it's, that there's a really good opportunity there for, I think, us as buyers to kind of, okay, so we're buying more online at the moment, but we don't have to think in the kind of the lazier ways. There are ways in which you can do that from people that you would ordinarily have gone and talked to and met at the counter, but you can still have that sort of that sense of connection by buying from your local bookseller, or buying from a bookseller in Ireland and from people are the ones physically putting that book into the envelope to send it off for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that everybody realized when you order a book. I mean, first of all, I have to say, some of the bookshops in Ireland have been ridiculously productive in terms of getting a website set up, getting online orders filled. Like, they are providing a service that they literally did not provide before.
Yeah.
Like, we have had the website on, going for years, but I don't think people realize we literally pick the books off the shelf. Yeah. We don't have a warehouse. The book is on the shelf, so the web order is handed to me, I pick it. Like, normally this is our day-to-day lives while we're going through the things, and you might get 5 or 10 web orders a day. I mean, it's been amazing how people, and it's been amazing how understanding people are, how willing they are to support us. Like, it's just been phenomenal. But I've noticed it myself with a lot of the local businesses in Limerick who have, all of a sudden you can click and collect your vegetables, you can click and collect your lunch, you can click and collect your wine. It's great. And like, when all this is over, those are the businesses that I'm going to go back to.
Yeah. And do you know what? And it's also then those extra elements that you see, certain booksellers doing the packages. So you say, I have a 10-year-old, she likes reading these books, and then you get that package of 4 or 5 books that are in the vein of, okay, well, if she liked this, she's also going to like those. And I love that aspect of it, those kind of parcel sort of surprise packs, deliveries that you can get as well. And so it'll be really interesting, I think, when it's all over. I mean, look, I still want to go into a bookshop. That's what I really want to do, and I still want to have that experience, and I'm looking forward to that experience returning in whatever way it will be as we begin to get back to normal. But it has, it's been really, like, I've found that experience as a buyer, it's been really interesting, and and it's given me a sense, I think, of how special a lot of Irish bookshops and booksellers are, because they're still trying to kind of give that personal touch to things that we sort of took for granted beforehand, and now we realize can be taken away potentially in an instant. So so it's been fascinating.
Am I understanding you correct? Are you the only writer in the world who's been able to write? Have you been writing?
I've had a really good week of writing, actually.
Oh, so many people are going to hate you.
I'm aware that I don't want to say I sound very smug when I say it, but I'm just being honest. Now, here's the thing. I was a journalist for, really 14 years, but 12 years in the Irish Times as a journalist, as an editor. And there were days when I had to write or edit or kind of put a page together or put a section together or put an article together, whatever, on days when you didn't want to do it because something had happened in your own background. Maybe, there are particular days that I can remember where something happened which was, traumatic and difficult, and, and yet I had to work, because a page still needed to be filled for the next day, and I think in a strange way that's kind of taught me how to sort of just not ignore what's going on outside, but to be able to kind of compartmentalize, I suppose, kind of thinking, and to say, okay, well, I can still, that's happening, but now for an hour, let's make this happen, and let's do this, and then we'll move on with the other thing, or whatever it might be. So I found, I'd had a lot of, as I was saying, a lot of kind of promotional and publicity stuff at the start of this year, and I had a new book out and the second boot book, The Rusty Rescue, which has thankfully gone really, really well, and I had all of that. So I'd sort of been looking for an opportunity, strangely, to write, and it was just a matter of kind of what I was going to write and what kind of ideas I was going to write. So I had been kind of going through a phase of trying to figure out a few things and looking at various ideas and various things, and then I just had a week this week where something started coming together. Now it may go nowhere, but it was really good fun writing it. It's been really, really good fun, and it's reminded me why the best part of writing for me is still the complete blank page. The what happens next, the reaching an end of a chapter on a bit of a cliffhanger and not knowing yourself exactly what's going to happen next, and then realizing, oh, hold on, well, that happened, or all these things you've been seeding through the story suddenly suddenly are there for a reason, and you know, they come together. And I've had one of those weeks where, yeah, kind of the magic of the actual writing aspect and the plotting and finding a character has all been there. So yeah, it's been really good. I've had a surprisingly good week in that regard.
Sure, look, great we're catching you this week then.
I know, yeah. I was probably a bit miserable the week before. But I love that. I mean, I don't know. I think that's still my favorite part of the whole process. As I said, there's kind of two parts. One is definitely the meeting, the readership part. But in terms of the actual creative process, there's times when that blank page is your friend.
Yeah.
And nobody else has read it, and nobody else can judge it, and you can make all the mistakes you want, and you can go and change them. And that's a really fun part of it. And it's, for me, it's been a bit of an escape from everything then as well, because the world in which I'm writing doesn't have this happening. You know?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, you're right. It's the ability to escape, even for, I would imagine even like the high is even higher now. You know, that post like creative high that you get, you're like, oh my God, I've written and I've managed to do it while all of this is going on. I'm so great. But
you know what, actually, I'd be lying if I was to say now that I think in the early days I realized how lucky I was. I've been very aware of so many writers who had books out, you know, in April, May onwards. That I think at the very beginning I was immediately grateful for the fact that I had a book out in February, and and then I have another one in September. And it's strange how much, I think this is like everybody's life. You look back, you suddenly become retrospective about every single thing that's happened in the last while, and you say, wow, aren't we lucky we did that then? Aren't we? So, you know, so I think in a way I felt so lucky that that the citywide read had happened pretty much with only really one or two aspects affected, and that I'd had a book out, and that I'd been lucky enough that it'd been in the shops long enough to kind of get into the bestsellers lists and all that and establish itself. So I'm very conscious of the fact that I was very lucky in that regard, and that's just pure timing. And I think as a writer, the more you do this, the more you become aware of timing. That there's so many things going on around you, and in culture and in life and in the book world, or in what kids are reading, or what people are interested in, that you can't control. And sometimes that flow goes against you.
Yes.
And sometimes it can go with you. And sometimes you just sit bobbing in the sea and nothing really happens. So I definitely was kind of felt probably very grateful that in retrospect, that I'd kind of been lucky really in that regard, and that I was conscious of a lot of writers who it must be very, very difficult to put a book out while all this was happening.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. Like, let's talk about the new boot, September. Is there any kind of conversation? Is it still coming in September? What has the conversation around it been like for you?
Do you know what? There hasn't been a huge amount yet, because as with everything, everybody's just waiting to see what happens. Yeah. And also because I suppose if you think about it, while we have there's the Irish end of it, but there's also the British end of it. And
yeah,
they're slightly different things. So at the moment I have a festival lined up in September in the UK, which at the moment is still going ahead. I think if it was an Irish festival, I'd probably be thinking, well, that's unlikely to happen. But because it's the UK, it's a bit different. So it has been, we've had some very early kind of chats about it, and a couple of ideas of how we might sort of, I suppose, find a different way around that sort of launch aspect, or different ways we can interact with the readership or involve the readership in a way that if we can't do the sort of the standard classes in bookshops or the theatre events, which I was lucky enough to do for the citywide read, all of that. So there's a couple of things that I'm sort of being slightly vague, only because we've had a couple of thoughts and ideas about it, but it's so early that it would be wrong to to talk about it. But
Yeah.
but on the plus side, it's been so the third book, The Creaky Creatures, which is all about this toy robot who is at the heart of these books. They find a park full of broken robot pets, and in the kind of the last park in the city that they live, and it's so we're kind of at a stage now where the illustrations are being done, but thankfully it's coming out in hardback, which was a great.
Oh yeah, you've made it, Shane. You're
That was
up.
lovely.
You're there. Hardback.
Yeah.
Woo.
But it's funny because in these I've got to a stage again. I think I've been doing this long enough that you appreciate certain things that I didn't necessarily appreciate when I first started writing stories and having books out. And one of them is that when they say, oh, actually, okay, we're changing now. We're going to have a hardback and then we'll have a paperback. You go, oh, cool.
Yeah. You know, it's like the apple, and it's like getting two releases. You get the hardback and then you get the paperback. Yeah, and it's 8 months later, and then people like you know, especially kids, they like to collect them. So you have two different editions, and the hardback will also. I would imagine that the library's interest has driven hardback too, because libraries want hardback, you know. Yeah,
I think it's been one of the great. I've really enjoyed this whole kind of spell with Boot because it's been wonderful, and to see. I think in Ireland it's been amazing. It's been really, really amazing, and I don't think I've ever had anything that's had as much sort of feedback and response, and I get so many kind of mails and messages and all of that about it. So it felt like a nice, I suppose, a step on from all of that you say, okay, well, actually, you know, it justifies a hardback in an incredibly competitive environment. We're talking businessy now. We should be talking fun stuff. But yeah, although I do have, hold on, I have it here. I do realize it is in hardback. The first book, there's the Dutch.
Oh my God! But.
So there you go. That's what it looks like in Dutch. And I found out this week it's going to be in Chinese. That's the latest. Ooh. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, but I'm saying it. So.
Well, you call me and I'll get Katrina to cut it out if it's an issue.
Yeah. So it's. Yeah, so that's it. So it's been nice. So I'm really looking forward to that in September, and we'll figure out. We'll figure something out. I will. Hachette as a publisher, Hodder Hachette, who kind of do the boot books. It's just you know, it's phenomenal how kind of creative and how good they are. So we'll figure something out. Yeah. I'm sure we'll figure something out.
Well, I mean, we're getting and actually another Hachette author. It does look like we're going to do a digital launch for Roisin Mimi's new book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So as in, like, the publishers are getting creative, but I think the bookshops are getting creative as well.
Yeah.
But you know, so it's going to be. I mean, this is and you know, the experience of buying books is going to change. It's not going to be as sensory as it used to be. Like I was saying that before, and for us. You know, I think I'm going to be doing a lot more encouraging people to call me for recommendations before they come into the shop so that I can have them ready.
Yeah.
And the Instagram, like, people message me on Instagram and email me for recommendations and stuff, which is great because I love to and I love to get the feedback that, oh, you know, they did like this or they didn't like this, and it helps you kind of adjust your algorithms for recommending a little bit.
And that is a worry for me in that the longer bookshops have been closed, that there's a tendency, and maybe I'm wrong, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a tendency for the more obvious books to be the ones that people will pick up because you don't have that aspect of saying, oh, listen, do you know what? If they like that, they should try this. It's worth giving this a go, or this great new series has come out. You know, I worry that there's a tendency to drift towards, and unfortunately, the children's kind of bestseller lists to tend to have very, you know, the same books and writers there for a long, long time, and they become the ones that are the easy ones to just reach for. And I don't know, have you found that it's a little trickier to get to the kind of the lesser known books, or is that just me bringing up something?
Well, I'll tell you something for nothing. I ran out of David Walliams pretty early, which was great. Because then people had to order other stuff. Like, bless him, like, David Walliams pays my wages, you know. I don't like, I absolutely love it, and I find his books great fun. But I will spend 20 minutes with a person at Christmas recommending books, and they will all, like, inevitably 70% of the time they'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to get to David Williams. But
Yeah,
what I can do is say, okay, you're going to get to David Williams. That's fine. Would you also consider getting this for them? And it is a constant struggle. Like, parents come into me, what's like Harry Potter? Nothing. Nothing is like Harry Potter. I'm sorry. Your child has peaked. There is nothing else. In terms of that genre, they have peaked. Let's try something else. You know, let's move out of the magical realm. Let's go into something else. So no, I've kind of found the opposite. I think people are buying books anyway. So the fact that we were out, because the supply chain had kind of collapsed, but the fact that I was out of the David Williams, or because we were out of American Dirt, or we were out of whatever, you know, the big seller was at the time, people still needed to read. And I think a lot of the smaller authors got a bit of a leg up there. But I am with you. I'm very upset for the debuts. I'm devastated for them. I can't imagine what it must have been like to have that dream come true and not be able to celebrate with your friends and family. It must have been awful. So, but you know, you'll always remember.
Yeah.
The book launch was cancelled, you know. So, but that being said, you know, a lot of the debut authors, they're really pushing them. You know, they're getting out there. And is there a pro to the fact that people are reading more for a debut author? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and there have been some. I mean, there's still been really good to see some books. I know in kind of you know, kind of adult literature, literary fiction have been pushing through, or the likes of Liz Nugent has remained, you know, is kind of pushed through. Obviously Liz is more established, but there have been a few books that have managed to get through, which is good. But it has made it much more difficult, obviously, for
and so let's talk about your actual, like, lockdown. Like, what have you been reading?
Well, funny, I have. So one of the things that you recommended.
Ooh, a classic. I love a good graphic novel. Yeah.
Which you recommended, because so when I was down, you asked, you know, I was in my son, who's 15, and he loves this kind of graphic novels and comic books, and he absolutely loved this kind of coming of age.
I'm so delighted.
Graphic novel, which I realized it was sort of 2005, and it completely, I hadn't heard of it, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It is wonderful. And so I'm still sort of, I said, I'm kind of reading this at the moment, and it's this combination of, it's kind of coming of age, and it's with sort of love and religion and family and all sorts of aspects kind of wrapped up in it. But it's just phenomenal, and it's sort of autobiographical and beautifully drawn.
Yeah.
I've got to be careful of the page that I pick.
Yeah, you got to always be careful with the graphic novels. We have
like you can see, it's just beautiful. As I said, not, you know, I've really enjoyed that, and but very importantly, my 15-year-old son really enjoyed that, because as we know, it can be very difficult to find you know, books for 15-year-old
boys,
young men to read. They don't. He's big into those kind of books, and he's been he loved that. That.
We have been, so we had like a really long-standing member of O'Mahony's, Laszlo, who, like anybody who's been in O'Mahony's in the last 20 years would have known Laszlo. He was Hungarian, and he used to run that section, and they went back last year, and when he left, Gary came in, and Gary is a graphic novel nut. And he draws, his art is amazing. Sure, he drew Boot.
Amazing.
His Boot drawing. But since he's arrived, I've noticed these sneaky graphic novels that I've never heard of before, that have been around for years, have like started to appear on the graphic novel shelf. And I'm like, where did that come from? And it's Gary, I think, he's sneakily ordering things. And Blankets was one of them.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And what else then? This is what I'm reading at the moment, which is so Arm of the Sphinx by Josiah Bancroft, which is the second in a book called the Books of Babel series. These books are phenomenally good and are they seem to be, certainly here, kind of pretty much unknown. They're based on the idea that this tourist and his new wife go to the Tower of Babel for a holiday. In this sort of, you know, world sort of like ours, where you know, this has been built, and where there are airships sort of traveling around it, and it's built, and it's got ringdoms. Each level is its own sort of ringdom, as they call them. This is the second book of it, and not to spoil anything, sorry, it's quite sunny coming in the window there, but
okay,
he loses his wife very early on, and that's what triggers the story. He goes in search of his wife. They are absolutely beautifully written. The detail in it is phenomenal. The sense of the world building is amazing. The characters are fantastic. These are brilliant books, and probably, you know, they've been as enjoyable as anything that I've read over the last couple of years. And I think
I've never, is that terrible that I've never heard of it?
No, because it's not I think I picked up the first one, probably I was going on holidays, and sometimes when I'm going away, I'll do the quick Kindle kind of download of 2 or 3 things that maybe it's the New York Times or someone might recommend, because I'm kind of like my fantasy and my science fiction, and often the likes of the New York Times will do a quick roundup, or somebody somewhere will have a sort of, you know, best of the year. And the first book, Senlin Ascends, was on that list, and I picked it up as I was heading away, and or downloaded it, and absolutely loved it. And then had this kind of sitting on the shelf, just meaning to read the second book. And honestly, I can't recommend these highly enough. If you like, I'm trying to, as I said, it's you know, it's got, you say steampunk and that just sounds off. I think it sounds a bit naff at this day and age, doesn't it, say that? But it's got all these, it's got this elements of this sort of, as I said, this sort of slightly alternative world that you would imagine was sort of late 19th century, and yet with 1,000 years of history and alternative technology built up behind it, and myth about this particular the Tower of Babel, which stretches high up into the clouds, and a whole culture that's been built around it. And it's just fantastic. So it reminds me of books like English Passengers. I don't know if you ever read that. Patrick Neal wrote that, and even aspects of oh God, I've gone blank on Northern Lights, and you know, so like in terms of kind of the alternate, you know, just that sort of a world that's like ours, but not quite ours.
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking of what image kind of came into my head there for some reason. Do you ever watch Doctor Who by any chance?
Oh, I do. I have. Yes, I do. Yeah.
You know that episode of Doctor Who where they're stuck in traffic forever?
Oh yeah.
I don't know why, but that image has come into my head. Like when you mentioned like the pockets of the tower, I was like, I bet you it's going to be like that Doctor Who episode where they're all stuck in traffic forever.
But it does have that. It has that. It's
kind of a steampunky vibe, that episode. Yeah.
But it does actually. That's not a bad way of describing. Definitely is elements of that, and that idea of a fully realized world that you're dropped into, where they said, you know, things are kind of like our, you know, but. Listen, I can't recommend those books highly enough. And then the other one, and there was the joy of, and you recognize this as a bookseller, the joy sometimes of getting proofs. And I got Paul Kenny's book. So I've got Paul Kenny.
I was literally just talking to Podrick about it.
So
and how did you get one?
I got one because they were very nice. I know somebody who's involved in it. They were very nice to send it to me, and so I've just literally started reading this, and I can tell you from the very first chapter, this, you just know it's going to be quality. An amazing writer.
I also want people to know I did not set this up, because I was literally talking to Podrick in the last hour about this book, and he told me that they printed 160 proofs for the London Book Fair, which was then cancelled. And then they had a plan to print another round of proofs, and they never did. And now I think that proof is going to be worth money someday.
Oh, good. Well, I better be careful then.
And I did not get one, and I'm furious.
And lovely gold. So anyway, so Monsters of Rookhaven, Podrick Kenny, which, as I said, he's a phenomenal writer. I mean, and like a proper everything you'd want to be in a writer, in terms of kind of his plotting, his characters, but his writing is so good. And as is often the way with books for younger readers, I think there's so many sort of grown adult readers who should be picking up these books and enjoying them and loving them, because they will find so much.
I think like I will say about Podrick Kenny in particular, like he launched Pog with us, his second book, and I did the speech, and I said it at the time, and I think Pog is one of those books that makes me feel sorry for people who don't read children's books.
Yeah.
Who have this snobbish idea. And there's a couple of authors, like I think Boot, like the first Boot was like, as in I enjoyed the second Boot too, but the first Boot, I love when people make me feel things for things that aren't alive. You know, like it's the Tom Hanks, Wilson, Hathaway thing. You know, you're crying over a volleyball, you're crying over a robot. Like and Pog was the same, you know, and Tin was the same. It's just absolutely great. I'm just looking here. I want to tell you about this because I'm doing a reread because you have daughters.
Yeah.
Have you ever read anything by Tamora Pierce?
No.
Okay. Now, I need to talk to you as a father with 3 women in the house. Well, 4 if you include your wife. Right?
Like, sounds like I'm in trouble.
You're like Tamora Pierce's books are, my father bought me the first one. So this is I have had so many different editions of this book because I give them away and then they're gone. So I just keep buying it again. So she is, to me, one of the most underrated fantasy writers of all time. She's one of the most underrated children's writers of all time. Now she's very famous. She's very popular, but nowhere near as popular as she should be. And this is my Desert Island book. If I am upset, I turn to Alana.
Wow.
But she is, my father bought me the first book when I was about 10, and she's definitely the first strong female character that I ever came across. You have to get them for your daughters. They're about a girl who she disguises her gender so that she can train to be a knight. But it's full of magic. It's full of, you know, like trying to figure out your life in the world. And there's 4 books in this series, but then like Tamora Pierce has created this whole universe called Trebond. Trebond, I think it's called. And there's 5 different series in the books, and Alana kind of pops up in all of them, but like one is her, you know, she kind of trailblazes for another woman to train to be a knight, her daughter or whatever, and they just sold it to be this like epic TV series.
Wow.
Highly recommend it. Get it for your girls.
Well, can I then, while we're doing that, I'm going to very quickly, because I know we don't have a huge amount of time. Hold on.
That's okay.
I'll do the on people that I don't think enough Irish people read.
Go on.
I'm going to add, because I mentioned this recently on somewhere on Instagram. Yeah. I'm going to add Kate DiCamillo.
Yes.
And I read, I actually reread The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane recently, because it's one of those books. She's a writer who has this uncanny ability, and I think it's a rare ability to say enormous amounts in one line, and to know how to nail a character in what they say, or a setting, or, you know, in just the briefest of descriptions, and yet there's a richness to everything she does. And I'm just, she has become my, if I could write like anybody, this is the person you'd want to write like. And I was lucky enough to interview her last year for the International Literature Festival in Dublin.
Oh yeah.
And she's just one of, you know, the nicest people you could ever hope to meet, and a phenomenal, a kind of a huge success in the States, and hugely regarded and considered one of the leading lights in sort of children's and young adult literature. But I cannot stress enough how amazing she is as a writer. And last year was Louisiana's Way Home, and because of Winn-Dixie is kind of possibly her most famous book, I think. Would that be right? Or Tales of Despereaux as well.
But the one that you have in your hand, every time that book comes in, someone who's working in the kids department puts it in classics. They put it in the wrong shelf because they think that it's older than it is.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's amazing. No, it's Velveteen Rabbit-esque.
Yeah.
You know? It just takes you back to those brilliant stories. And again, caring about things that you shouldn't care about.
Yeah, and that fairy tale quality, and beautiful old style drawings. So yeah, it does look quite sort of old fashioned.
Yeah, it looks classic. It looks classic. Yeah.
But I gave, again, and when my son last summer was looking for something to read, I think he kind of came to me and was like, "You've on board anything to read?" And I gave him Louisiana's Way Home, and he was just like, and it was one of those books where if you sort of said you should read this, he wouldn't have read it. And
Yeah.
when you kind of picked it up and just started reading it because he had nothing else to do, he found himself completely wrapped up in this in this character, in this world. And it has one of the great lines which has become a kind of for me a really great example of how you can encapsulate a character, as I said, in a line. And it opens with, I don't have the book in front of me, so I might be paraphrasing slightly, but it opens with this character, Louisiana, being taken out of her bed in the middle of the night by her grandmother and kind of thrown in the car, and they go off on this misadventure. And the line she has is, Grandma has a lot of middle of the night ideas. And that, there is no better line than I've read in the last 5-10 years, maybe, that says, there's that character.
Yeah.
That's the grandmother. There,
Yeah.
line. And so that's my other recommendation.
Excellent. Have you anything else you want to plug?
Trying
to get that wife. How's your wife doing with everything?
No, we're doing okay. No, listen. No, I think the only thing I want to plug genuinely is, if I know that we're getting closer to the opening of bookshops in Ireland, but I just want to reiterate that it's it's wonderful. I think it's been wonderful to find that you can still buy books in Ireland from booksellers that you know and trust, and that you don't have to kind of turn to the place we always thought we kind of bought our books from when we were buying online. And I know a lot of other people were buying from, from different sources, but I think it's just really emphasized the fact that there are still, even in the most difficult of circumstances, there have been brilliant booksellers in Ireland doing, amazing work at kind of keeping the books flowing and keeping, pressing books into hands digitally, that'll kind of surprise you, and that new discoveries. And so I suppose if I'm going to plug anything, it's sort of the likes of O'Mahony's and the booksellers in Ireland who go by that. That's where we can, even if the doors are shut for a week or two more, and even if we have to stand 2 meters away from each other, and even if we're not allowed to paw the books in the way that we want.
You can't tell them anymore.
But there's still the places. There's still absolutely the places to buy our books. So I'm plugging the booksellers. I'm plugging O'Mahony's.
You're one of our favorites for a reason, Shane. As in, the women of O'Mahony swoon every time you're mentioned. Oh, Shane Hegarty. Woo!
Now.
So good to us.
You're warm now. Warm.
Thank you so much. It's been great to chat to you, even digitally. Nice.
No, it's been brilliant. It's been fun. And as a writer, I should say, the amount of writers who've had to figure out this whole Zoom thing, this has been a new, so that's the whole other thing. We'll see how much of that lasts. But yeah, so
no, it's been great. And I mean, in one way it's been amazing how we've been able to connect, and another way it isn't natural, but
no.
But thank you so much.
No problem. I'm sure.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great to talk to you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.